is your last session. It's my Friday night, and the semester's coming to an end. And so I'll do my best to keep it short, half an hour at most. When I'm at 25 minutes, if you can just raise your hand, just give me a warning, and I'll wrap things up real quick. Tonight's theme is not the most conducive for this type of environment. If I had my ideal wish, we would be all at Starbucks, drinking caffeine, sitting around and doing an interaction dialogue. But the theme of theology and science, faith and reason, apologetics, we'll see how this goes. I became a Christian when I was 16 years old at a retreat. When we first came to this country, our family went to church back in 1970. In every city, there was usually one Korean church. It was called United Church. They're not good. And out of that, all the churches split off. Irony. I went to Carnegie Mellon to do a bachelor's in math, and then went to Dallas for a THM to experience the calling there, and then went to Southern California for youth ministry. And while I was there, students would come all the time and ask questions about evolution, about relative ethics, and things of that nature. And I just started some reading in order to better comprehend, and found myself really falling in love with the topic. When I was growing up, if you remember Josh McDowell, is that the guys heard it? See, that's so old now. I mean, 5, 7 years ago, most people would have recognized the name. But that text was about the only thing that was available for apologetics back then. And yet, when I was doing youth ministry, I started doing some reading in apologetics. I came across J.P. Moreland's Skill in Secular City. Ring a bell? Okay. If you contrast the two books, it's amazing that Josh McDowell's work, almost, nothing derogatory against him, but almost like a high school read. But when you read J.P. Moreland's work, it's almost college level. In other words, apologetics became very sophisticated. And the reason why is that it wasn't theologians who were doing apologetics anymore. It was philosophers, mainly through the work of a man named Alan Plantinga, who started Christian philosophy in many ways, a number of different societies, and it became quite sophisticated. And I became interested in a topic that I told my wife, just give me 4 years, let me finish a PhD in this area, and then we'll see what happens. And so I looked at different programs, came to Trinity, and then started writing my dissertation. And 10 years later, I was done. By then, we were too settled. I told my wife we would move back to California. She loves California for whatever reason. But I'll never make it back because I'm settled here, and so is she. But I finished my dissertation, and it was on information theory and biological coding systems. I wanted to work on the origin of life. Because when you look at science and the number of issues that deal with, there's only 2 areas, not only, but 2 major areas in which science has difficulty explaining, partly because in my mind, because God has intervened, and origin of life is one of those. And so through those 10 years, surveying the different theories, I came to the conclusion that there's no Bible theory out there. There is no Bible theory. There just isn't. And the more science understands the workings of our coding system, the more we realize that the gap is so broad that it cannot be bridged on a naturalistic level. And so I'm doing this, I'm getting more and more convinced in the truth of my faith. And yet I'm becoming more and more discouraged, because if the evidence is so clear for me, then why is it that people who are in the field themselves, atheists, not converted to theism, if it's so clear? And so I experienced this irony that the beauty of our God in creation has left clues of which science cannot provide answers for at this stage. And yet scientists reject all theistic explanations. And my conclusion was that it's really not about reason. The reason why people reject Christianity or theism is not really based on rational reasons or scientific reasons, but that it is a moral issue. That people ultimately do not want to believe in God. And therefore, they will interpret the data consistent with their desire. But that's true of me as well. That I have certain fundamental beliefs, and therefore I will interpret the data in line with those particular beliefs. And it's true of them, and it's true of me. So that while I value apologetics as a reasoning tool, I no longer see it as having the power to convince people to change it. Because they don't want to. No, if you're married, you understand. No amount of reasons can change someone to do something they don't want to do. Thank you. I don't know how many of you are married, but God forbid, but if you ever do, you understand the truth of that statement. Not about reasons. Not about reasons. Well, this became clear to me in a book by Thomas Kuhn. I don't know. This is the last time I'll ask. Anybody heard of Thomas Kuhn? Paradigm? Okay. Like last time I'll. Thank you. Okay. Maybe I'll ask it one time. But Paradigm Shifts. If you haven't heard the book, you may have heard the term Paradigm Shifts. Written in 1962, some individual scholars have called it the most important high academic text of the second half of the 20th century. That's a huge, huge claim. If you have not heard the book, the term paradigm is now applied in almost every academic discipline. Even in church, theological paradigms, ministry paradigm. Well, we've shifted from believer-based worship to seeker-friendly service. That's a paradigm shift, right? Now we're experiencing one from seeker-friendly to emergent church. That's a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift in economics, business, everywhere, psychology. And in this book, there's an experiment that is done which he talks about. And in this experiment, a number of subjects were asked to wear goggles. The problem is that the goggles were fitted with inverted lenses. So that when you put the goggles on, you see the world wrong side up. Everything's flipped over. So that when the subjects put on the goggles, initially they experience a crisis of which they're not able to operate in any way. Generally what they do is they just sit on the floor and they just wait it out. But after about an hour or two, they begin to operate normally. They walk around, they converse, they sit down, they're able to eat food. So when the experimenters asked them, how are you able to do this? Their claim was that they see the world right side